This is a special presentation from Council Rock Primary School.
Okay, folks, I think we're ready to get started. I see we have a small but undoubtedly mighty group. I'd like to introduce you to a few people who are with us tonight. Our principal at Council Rock, Matt Tappan.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, sorry, Matt. Our assistant
Okay.
principal, Aaron Jeffries.
Hi.
John Novelli from our Buildings and Grounds Department. Susan Gasparino is a Board of Education member and a kindergarten parent joining us as well this evening. And Dr. Debbie Baker is on here somewhere as well, I know. Our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. Deanna Spagnola, our Director of Student Support Service, and I see Mark Ikonovich is also on, our Board of Education President. So I'd like to welcome you all as kindergarten parents and just thank you for taking the time to join us tonight to talk to us a little bit about how things are going and give us some feedback so we can continue to think about the work ahead and how it's working for you and your children most importantly, and what adjustments we can make. I'd also like to say that I really missed the opportunity to talk to you at this year's open house, the curriculum night at the beginning of the year, as a parent who transitioned here when my oldest at the time was in second grade, who's now a freshman in college, and my now middle child was in preschool and has spent his entire time, he's now a 10th grader, his entire time at Brighton and enjoyed the kindergarten experience immensely at Council Rock. And my youngest, as I like to say, by far our favorite child, just don't tell my boys, our daughter, who also spent her years at Council Rock and now is at French Road. And I really like to share that experience with all of you as a parent who went through it myself and who hopefully can lend some perspective to that experience and just simply welcome you as families that we're so glad are part of this family with us and experiencing all the joy that Council Rock has to offer. So welcome aboard. We're going to spend a little bit of time just exclusively with kindergarten parents tonight, the next 25 minutes or so before we welcome everybody else on, just kind of trying to get some feedback from you as to how things are working. It's obviously a very strange year for everybody, not just in schools, but in your workplaces as well. And a half-day program doesn't lend itself to completing everything that we'd like to and giving the experience we'd like to in the first place, which is why we're trying to work towards a full-day program. Cutting that in half is half of a half is a half and then some, and it's not what we'd like to be doing. So that being said, even though we don't have the time we want, we still want to make the most out of that time. And if you're all remote, want to make the most out of that experience as well. So the questions in the exchange and the comments in the exchange that have come up, we will be addressing at 6 o'clock more directly so that everybody has the benefit because they weren't necessarily specific to kindergarten. But we do want to touch on a couple of topics real quickly and then really just open it up for you. And I would encourage you now while I speak to the first item or two to simply jump into the chat if you'd like to ask questions. If that's easier for you than verbalizing those, you're more than welcome to do that too. But in just a minute or so, I'm going to yield the floor to all of you and engage in a conversation with you and really facilitate the discussion between you and your building administrators and everybody else on this Zoom to really get at the heart of what we can continue to think about as school leaders at Council Rock. So one issue that came up in the exchange specific to kindergarten was the amount of time spent. And some people asking, could we have more? Is there a way for us to come back for more than just the 2 days in the hybrid environment? And there are empty classrooms with people that are teaching remotely. There seems to be the space to do that. What would it take for us to be able to come back? So I just want to clarify for you that the issue for us is simply one of not just space, but also having enough people to do that work. So it's a resource question more than anything. Initially, we'd say we don't have enough space to have everybody in the building. And looking at the entire K-2 environment, having everybody there, but providing the social distance that's necessary based on the current guidelines, the 6 feet social distance, means that we can't have everybody in the building at the same time. And even if we were able to find a way to really wedge people into every nook and cranny, which I still don't think was possible, we would have to put kids into smaller groups and have them moving about the building into those spaces in these small, essentially pods. And the problem with that is having enough adults to be with them and still provide a meaningful program. So in other words, we don't have enough teaching staff to be teaching them all the time. So to essentially split them into groups and have full-time instruction, it would require them to be supervised by other adults. but that then results in it simply being supervision as opposed to an educational experience. And we don't have the staff to do that. So we don't really have the resources available at all. And that's really what led to that decision. And that hasn't changed since the beginning of the year. One thing I know will come up at 6 o'clock with everybody is, with infections rate low, this is particularly at the high school level, and 7:15 we'll be meeting with high school parents too. They've said with infection rates low, why can't we bring people back more? And the answer is, even though the infection rate is low, one, I'd make the argument that part of the reason why it's probably low is because what we're doing is working. So we wouldn't want to change that. But also the reality is the guidelines haven't changed at all. We still need to be providing that distance. Another question that's come up is how come other school districts can do that? So some of our neighbors, particularly at the primary level, have been able to bring kids in full time. We don't have the space to do that, or as I was speaking to earlier, the number of adults that you need to do that. And everybody's buildings are different, and everybody's resource capacity in terms of the number of people is different also. So we would love to have kids in 5 days, but we're still currently not able to do that. Another suggestion has come up is why not use Wednesday in a way where you rotated, so you had at least every other week, half the classes would be able to come in on that Wednesday. We still are not in a position where we feel like that is the safest solution or the most effective and the most consistent for families or the experience for kids, and it wouldn't allow us to do some of the cleaning that is happening on Wednesday. I hesitate to say deep clean because John and his group across the entire district, frankly, are deep cleaning each and every day, but we are able to do more on that Wednesday without people in the building as well. That was really the bulk of the kindergarten specific comments that were coming up, but I'm sure that as new families to us at a very unique grade level with a unique amount of time, there might be issues particular to you. So I don't want to spend the entire time speaking at you. I want to give you the opportunity to jump in now and ask questions and have a conversation with us. So the floor is yours. Who would like to jump in and go first? While people are considering what they'd like to say and carefully crafting their comment or their question, I'm sure. Matt or Marin, would you like to jump in from the building perspective and share anything about how kindergarten is going and what your perception is of the work and how that will progress over time?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. It's so great to have you and to see so many of you. I think I echo Dr. McGowan's sentiments that I wish I could have everyone back all the time. That would be our dream and our goal as we, move into safer times. For the meantime, I would say our kindergartners who are in the building that I see, twice a week, or that we see twice a week, are doing a really great job. I think the smaller class sizes offers a unique opportunity for our kids and for the teachers in the hybrid model in terms of really being able to get to know kids, get to know their needs, get to know their strengths, get to know who they are as little learners, and really help them understand, albeit strange perhaps, the way that school is functioning. And I don't want to take for granted that many of your children may have already been in school type experiences, but their first K-12 public experience. And I appreciate the hard work of the teachers in that hybrid model to try to incorporate safely as much as they can of the kindergarten program. So very physical, very visual, hands-on and play, and they've done really creative things to try to rotate the play materials so that kids still have a chance to have hands-on experiences and still be safe, and then make sure they either quarantine or get cleaned. And then I would say for our remote friends, I'm truly impressed and awed at your children, but also our teachers and the work that they did. I think that was the great unknown. We knew that we could manipulate the environment at school and create, we didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, but we knew we could create school. I am so impressed with those of you who are remote, the way that you have worked with your children, supported them, supported the classroom teacher at having them understand what Zoom is, having them understand the fundamentals of muting yourself, unmuting yourself, what it means to log off of a Zoom and then come back to one if they're working in small groups. And I think our teachers have really been thoughtful. Mrs. Tisa and Ms. Flanagan have been really thoughtful about, making sure that you're getting an experience, but also recognizing when your children are fatiguing and you maybe need a break or maybe need to get up and do something different. And I think they have the best laid plans. And I think they found out pretty quickly that those take a lot longer in the remote world. But, I've been able to pop into each of the 4 remote classes for a Zoom, and it's great to see their faces. I've had some people share experiences, of their children doing the pledges with me or Mrs. Jeffries in the morning. And, I think just trying to bring you all into the fold as well. So I guess, I didn't know how it was going to go, but I am really impressed with how the kindergartners as a whole, the entire class, are adjusting to kind of the differences and the changes and the nuances of what we're doing here. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate your role in that, in making that happen. So
thanks, Matt.
This is Liz. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can. Thanks, Liz.
I really do appreciate everything. I know this isn't ideal for anyone, but I don't have any older kids, so this is my first interaction, and it's been really amazing. So I appreciate you guys.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate you saying that. And I'll tell you, Liz, as great as it may have been so far for you, I can promise you this: as things are different, it will only get better.
I will say one nice thing. I have a 3-year-old son who starts his day by saying, "Good morning, Council Rock." So it has become like our ongoing joke. And then he'll say should be you for Halloween.
Beautiful. He's got the costume.
He's got it down.
Throw on a cheap tie and he's good.
So thank you. And we have Mrs. Tisa, and we couldn't be, we see the effort and I see it and appreciate it. So thanks,
Liz. Much appreciated. One of the concerns we've had is, typically we're able to transition differently with families too and welcome you differently. And, I'm not far removed from the same situation, and we spend so much time and energy thinking about our preschool experiences for our kids and going to see things and getting to know the school that our kids are going to go to. And under normal circumstances, that's just kind of how probably many people here have operated. And all of a sudden, kindergarten, this giant milestone moment, you had to pull up at the curb and let them go. And it wasn't the same. It wasn't the opportunity to get comfortable and see the environment and feel really great about where your child was going. So I guess our thanks to all of you too for really trusting us in a very different way than you would have had to under normal circumstances. So thank you for that, Liz, and thanks to all of you.
Alexa. Hi, my name is Alexa. Yeah, I echo, I'm so impressed, and I think everyone is working so hard. And I sent an email just today to Mr. Tappan, but we also enjoyed the pledges and the Council Rock pledge. And this is not so much like a rose or a thorn. It's sort of a general thing that I've been sitting with as we've been doing all of this. And I have an older daughter too, who's in 4th grade at Frez. It's sort of like the line we're all walking sort of as educators, I think, and as parents, and trying to understand, I've never been this, I'm remote, and I've never been this in the classroom really with my child. And it's amazing. And it's amazing to watch. And it also brings up all these different things about sort of, how you help and how you don't help and how you support and how you don't. And Ms. Flanagan has been very helpful with that. It also just gets me thinking all the time about, this is the beginning of the school journey for the kindergartners especially. And I just think this is sort of a larger question, no real answer to it, but as they sort of move forward, and we don't know how this will all keep unfolding, the main thing is them being on a journey in a community as a learner, is what those formative, this is like the beginning of the rest of their life as a learner, how they perceive themselves as a learner, how they understand the way they learn, how they process with a teacher, with the other kids, and feeling a part of the community. And I guess my main question is, especially for these little ones, the kindergartners or the first graders too, even, who had half of a year, and then just sort of that ongoing, question about how are the creative ways that we can keep making sure they feel like they're in a community, because that's what they're all not getting as much of. I mean, we all know that. But I just keep thinking about it a lot and seeing it in all these little ways. And so I guess I just throw it out there, as I know we're all thinking about it, but that's sort of my biggest, and in all honesty, I don't really worry about my own child that much in that way, because there's a lot of support, but I know some kids don't have all of that support also. So I guess that's just what's on my mind a lot with all of this, is just sort of how do we give them that feeling, which was so easy to get, which at Council Rock, because I have an older kid, was such a beautiful experience. I mean, I was weeping. They're all weeping when they leave, then the circle around at the end of the last day of school. For Liz, you've never experienced it. I mean, like, the kids weep when the school year ends, because they really feel a part of that community. So that's the one piece that, like, I just feel like, oh gosh, I hope Orla gets that, So anyway, I bring it up not with solutions exactly, but just to put it out there.
Yeah, Alexa, I think you bring up a really great point, something that's been on our mind too. I think on one side of it, there are some positives to this. Now, we'd never want it, right? I'm not saying they're positives that we're looking for, that are a great thing, or necessarily things to celebrate, but in the spirit of, what are some silver linings? What are things that might be pluses that we could take away from it, although we'd rather not. The time that you're spending, that one-on-one time, and the learning you're doing from home is giving you a very different perspective into your child as a learner and as a human than you'd have if they were experiencing that just with a teacher throughout the course of the day. So there's positives to that. I think there's also positives to kind of maybe a shift generationally for this group of kids right now, that perhaps they will leave this experience affected in a different way than kids before them, than all of us, in terms of resilience, perseverance, independence. There could be some skills and some traits that really they pick up that we protected them from, or we kind of insulated them from developing in the past, that might be really beneficial. I'm seeing it all ends with my kids and with a college freshman who's having to figure things out very differently than college kids would under normal circumstances. And I see that in each of my kids at their developmental levels. So those are positives that maybe will really benefit them long run, but also this idea of being away from community and not connecting as much. I wonder how much that will help when we do start to come back together, them cherish that opportunity even more, engage differently, and value relationships in a different way. Will we build community and trust community more because we realize that can disappear pretty quickly? And it's kind of ethereal for a kindergartner, but I do wonder. I will say at the school level, we're really thinking a lot about social emotional health. We do community building, and it's different in every classroom and at every level. I'd love for Marin and Matt to weigh in on that. But the point is, part of the Wednesdays actually was to have the whole group together, although on a screen, to help build that community too. The idea that they will eventually, the hope would be eventually be all back together, although this obviously seems to be going longer than anybody would have thought just even a few months ago. So I think that's something long-term that we really need to think about. I'm glad that we have started to build that structure around restorative circles, particularly community building circles in all of our classrooms, K through 12, and social emotional learning. We have the second step program as well at the elementary level. I think those are pieces that are in place that will allow, it's kind of a scaffolded approach that will allow us to really jump into that kind of sense of community once we are back together. Matt, Marin, would you like to elaborate on those at all?
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Mrs. Jeffries.
I've been thinking about the exact topic that you had brought up, Alexa, maybe in a little bit of a parallel way to our community building among classrooms and cohorts that we have who are attending in person, but also different ways of how can we bring kids who are learning at home, how can we bring a piece of them into the building, and then share ways with them maybe that kids who are in the building are reflecting on maybe something, some graphics that they've selected that represent them or something like that, that then we can share back via Seesaw and show that kids are noticing or connecting with something that they have in common. Or I think our teachers are working really hard with the task of connecting their two separate cohorts who are essentially their in-person classes, section A and B. But then I think there's this third piece, we're also bringing in the kids who are at home to that equation. And then, like you said, hopefully all of our fingers crossed, when they walk through those doors in the fall, making them feel like a part of them has been part of that building in some way, giving them that early connection. So it's definitely been something that Matt and I have started conversations about, and just thinking about the technology and the logistics of it and how to bridge that gap. But certainly a great point that's raised.
And I would also say that, in our own isolation of it, Marin and I can put our heads together and think about it. But if you all have ideas, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out. So, sometimes with the best of intentions, we cause harm. We know that in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that I was going to address, and I'll probably address again, someone in the thought exchange was very upset that I was calling the at-home learners, the Council Rock at-home learners. And it seemed like they were it was not intentional to try to separate. It was trying to just it meant there were hybrid at-home learners, and I didn't want to, so I stopped that. Today. We're all just Council Rock, and it was not certainly intended to bring divisiveness, but it clearly did, or it struck a nerve with someone. And so if you have ideas about what might help, I know Sue, I just saw, I think it's a great idea, possibly some pen paling. I know that there are, the second grade is using some pen paling to cross cohort. But I think that could be a really great idea to connect those students who are learning from home and who are learning in the hybrid model to the building and kind of that. So that might be something we might be able to look at second grade to do some writing, and then have with kindergartner, some kind of cross grade level component as well. So any ideas that you have, nothing's off the table. The worst we can say is, ooh, we're not sure how we could make that work. And it might lead to another idea. So please feel free to contact us, give us a call anytime, shoot us an email. We're happy to kind of think with you and use you as thinking partners as part of the community as well, because I want you all to feel that way too. I want you to feel invited into the community, no matter which role you're playing. So.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Marin. Other thoughts exclusive to kindergarten? I don't want to leave this opportunity too soon for us just to address specific kindergarten issues before we have everybody else on.
Sarah, you're on mute, or your sound isn't on. You're not muted, but I don't hear your sound.
Do you have headphones plugged in or something?
Yes, now good. There you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
There you go. Perfect.
I had my external speaker that we use for our Zooms. Sorry. I guess my question would also be how we could bring in for the remote learners some live social piece. So I feel like I love the idea of the pen pals. I also would love the idea of is there some way, the way they had first grade reading buddies, when my daughter was in kindergarten and she had a connection with a first grader, and they had then she could see kind of a path for herself as she was going to go to first grade. Maybe is there a Zoom buddy or something that is a live person that you're talking to? Because my son isn't yet reading, and as much as he'd love to draw pictures, maybe even something live where he could communicate in the way he can right now might be nice too.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion too, for the building to mull through along with the others. I think that's a really neat idea and great point, because he's not likely to write an in-depth letter at this point or read one when it comes, but to engage and connect socially would be really helpful. So great idea.
Love it.
other thoughts or questions? Anything else specific to kindergarten? Anything else that's going really well that you'd like to see us do more of? All right. Well, what we'll do is pick up again in about 4 or 5 minutes when everybody else comes in, and we'll start the rest of the presentation with the rest of the group at that point. Good evening, everyone. If you're just joining us, we'll just get started in about a minute or so. We'll give people a little bit more time to come in. We've just wrapped up a conversation with just the kindergarten parents, and now we're welcoming everybody on board. We'll go through some thought exchange comments, check out what is being written also on Facebook, and take questions, comments in the chat as well. So if you just give us a minute, we'll let people get in, and then we'll get going. Good evening and welcome. If you weren't on with us before, if you are, welcome back. My name is Kevin McGowan. I'm the superintendent here at Brighton, and I'm joined by several of our outstanding staff members to answer your questions tonight, get some feedback from you. We really want to know how it's going for you, for your child, and what we can do differently or better. Matt Tappan, the principal, is here with us, as is Deanna Spagnola, Director of Student Support Services, John Novelli from Buildings and Grounds, Marin Jeffries, the Assistant Principal at Council Rock. I see Sue Gasparino here from the Board of Education, Mark Kokonovich also from the Board of Education, and we're all really happy to be getting feedback from you and glad that you could join us as well. I'd encourage you along the way tonight to jump into the chat. Feel free to enter any questions or comments, feedback there. And just generally to feel free to speak up and let us know how things are going so we can keep getting better. We'll use the thought exchange to guide part of the conversation at the beginning, and then we'll also check out Facebook comments at the end and in between, ask you to jump in and have a dialogue with us so that we're not speaking at you. I also see Debbie Baker, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction here too. Sorry, Debbie, did not mean to leave you out. I'm going to start and share my screen with feedback from the thought exchange. Just give me 1 second here. That was done with our Council Rock hybrid families first, and then we'll look at the information that was shared by the remote families and kind of not necessarily focus in on every specific comment, although we'll go through the top bunch. There are only 18 comments, so we'll have time to walk through just about all of them, but also just kind of think about it pretty thematically in terms of what people are reporting out. First of all, just general assessment. Matt, Marin, how have things gone so far based on what you expected versus where we're at? What's your overall assessment of how things are going?
Hi, everyone. Matt Tappan, Principal at Council Rock. So nice to see you all, whether you're on here or on Facebook Live. Glad to have you. I would say that we are super pleased with how things have gone, both in the hybrid world and the remote world. We are so glad to have students back in our lives, again, whether on a screen or whether in the building. Our kids are doing incredibly well coming in. You are doing incredibly well at drop-off and pickup. We appreciate that, those of you who are doing that. And they are, following directions, no issues with masks, social distancing, getting a chance to, be in school or be at home in school on a screen. And we're just really happy. We know there's always room to look and see what else can we do and be responsive. But I would say overall, really pleased with how our kids are doing and the experiences, hopefully, that you're seeing them have.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Couple quick questions I want to run through and comments that have come up, some of the themes. The first is around kindergarten. We mentioned this to the kindergarten-only parents, but I do want everybody to hear this since it's here in the exchange for people. Folks were wondering, could they come back more? It's very little time. We already had a half-day program, and now the half-day is cut in half in terms of the number of times they're in school. The suggestion was you have these big open classrooms where some people are teaching remotely from that classroom and kids could be in there. Our issue was two things when we went into the year: space and resources in terms of people. So when it got right down to it, we didn't have enough space to have all the kids come in at the same time and be consistent and faithful to the social distancing requirements. So in other words, to keep everybody safe, we couldn't do that. Even if we could, and I think the way I explained before was shoehorn everybody into smaller spaces and move them around, we would have had to put people into small groups or pods to be able to make that happen. But then kids would need to be supervised with that small group. They wouldn't be able to receive instruction consistently from teachers. We simply don't have enough people. So that supervision would look more like just watching kids as opposed to them learning from a teacher. And then even there, we did not have enough people to be able to provide that type of program. And then one questions the quality of the program when you get to that space as opposed to the opportunity to learn independently. So all in all, it came to this was the maximum that we could have kids in school and the way that we could approach them. Although we would love to have kids back, it doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon. We keep thinking about, if the social distancing was a little bit less, could we approach this differently? But right now, that's not a reality. And it's working, and we have not had issues with infection and not too much in terms of quarantine either district-wide. So we won't be departing from that anytime soon, but we're very sensitive to that. The other question that's come up is around the Wednesdays. And what about the Wednesday and rotating kids in on that day so that they could at least get a third day, perhaps every other week? And we don't look at that right now as a viable option either, although, we'll always keep these things on the table and keep thinking about them. But for one, although we're doing deep cleaning all the time, there is a lot that happens on that day that goes even deeper than that. I hesitate to use the term deep cleaning because, frankly, I think the procedures right now are pretty deep each and every night. That's one issue. The other is that whole group opportunity on Wednesday that the virtual environment provides is an opportunity for kids to engage differently with the larger group. There's also the benefit of learning that way in the sense that we may end up at some point remote based on what happens with COVID over the next several months. I'm not reading any tea leaves and not anticipating anything other than trying to make sure we're prepared for that. Don't walk away from this thinking all of a sudden that's about to happen, but that is then a good training and experience both on the instructional side for teachers, but also for kids to have that as part of our routine and part of what we're offering on that day. So in any case, it structurally is working really well, but understood that's something that we'll continue to think about as well. One thing that came up in the exchange, Madam Marin, if you could jump in and speak to this, is this idea of specials, seeing people often, the balance of that. What are your thoughts about where we're at with specials? Why are we scheduled the way we are? And what are we thinking about going forward?
Yeah, so special areas were something we spent a long time discussing when we were in the planning stages. And, there were some different ideas we batted around in terms of like doing, for those of you who have older students, French Road is doing kind of pods and kind of a concentrated, almost a quarter of art or a quarter of music. We don't have the staff to be able to have spread that around. And to echo what Dr. McGowan just said, we also needed to design a system that meshed the remote students and the hybrid students because we share staff within there of music teacher and art and PE. Actually, music teacher, art, and library all teaching both remote and hybrid. So we needed to have those mesh so that they weren't crossing over. But we also needed to have a system that if we were to go all remote, we had a schedule in place that was there. What it does mean, especially for the hybrid folks, is so we're on a 6-day cycle. So library and art are already 1/6 of the time. And then you throw in that it's on an every other day or, not as often. So it does mean that we have a lot less of the special that we were hoping for. It's not perfect. We need to keep looking at it and, really hoping, looking to see what we can do to provide, the experiences for kids. But it's where we are right now. And, our teachers are working really hard to try to make the work engaging, meaningful, and not just busy work, and keep their curriculums moving along as well within those special areas. So.
Thanks, Matt. There's a comment in here about differentiation in terms of learning menus. And maybe with study groups in the classroom or at home, first grader feeling bored, some of the menus might be too easy. What are we thinking about in terms of how the program might grow, what teachers might be looking at over the next several months?
Yeah, so the learning menus, I think the first grade in particular, but first and second grade may be using that as kind of to build some of that independence. I think as teachers were planning for a lot of what was going on, one of the biggest challenges was not knowing what kind of support they might have at home in terms of sending things home. And it's hard to think of kindergarten first or second grader kind of doing something on their own as an extension of what they were. So I think that the ideas of the learning menus were really to provide choice. We use them in the classroom during readers' workshops. So while the teacher might be reading with a small group of students, they have some activities that they need to complete on their own. And I understand why it might have been simplified to a certain point, especially at the beginning of the year, to ensure that all kids got those routines, understood if it was a game that needed to be played, that they understood what that was. I would encourage you, if you're experiencing that, to reach out to your child's teacher to just, give them that feedback and say, hey, the learning, mats or the learning, those are really, the menus are working, but is there anything, or what would the next step be? And, one of the other things that I know our extended studies teachers actually just created and sent home, or are sending home, so I'm not sure if they've actually gone home, are some things that are natural extensions that can happen within kind of any learning. And that is another opportunity to kind of extend. But I think that if you let your teacher know, your child's teacher know, they can be thinking about that and giving you suggestions either within the existing menus, or maybe they do need to change it up and do some differentiation within those as we get to know who the kids are. We understand that they have some more of that independence and they're able to do those things on their own on their home learning days. So,
thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Another question here about increasing the Zoom time on Wednesdays. Somebody saying, I'd like to see more than a 20-minute lesson. Story read aloud. Nice to have at least a 20-second mini lesson in the afternoon. What's the thinking on the Zoom schedule and what people can expect, again, over time?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, you can't differentiate where those comments are coming from. I'm not sure if that's coming from a kindergarten, parent in terms of growing. I know that the teachers are really looking at building stamina. And then building those routines during that Wednesday, especially it must be a hybrid student, I'm guessing. We are in the hybrid, right, Dr. McGowan?
Yes. Yep,
okay.
This is the hybrid group. Yep.
Okay, thanks. So, I think that we're always looking to grow and utilize that time wisely. I know that, these first 6 weeks have been building routines, and, Wednesdays are no different, except that they're a completely different routine. I know that, we're looking to grow and make sure that those experiences are valuable. Again, with a focus, Dr. McGowan said it, we are going to definitely do learning on Wednesdays, but also with the focus of bringing those communities together, making sure that the students in cohort A, Monday, Thursday, know cohort B, Tuesday, Friday, that they have the chance to interact, that they have the chance to know one another as a whole class, because although they seem like two different classes, they are one, large cohort class together. So, I think the point is well taken that we are always looking to grow that time, especially as students are able to manage it. I think that that's the hard part at our level, is to define that time. Really depends on the class and the age level. And I think that it's our job to continue to develop what those skills are for students to be there, to say, we'll stay on for 50 minutes today, but have kids. And I know those of you who have kids, not there and, not paying attention or not with the group, might not be the best choice, but we need to be building and scaffolding for students what that looks like. So I think point well taken.
Thanks, Matt. How about the curb sidewalk space available to drop off? Only the first half gets utilized, might make it move more quickly. I think you probably.
I'm going to let you take that one, as you've been back there a little bit more than me.
Yeah, this is something that just sort of came up among staff this week. And I think really it's something that's an easy fix. We've just been trying to negotiate the crosswalk, which sometimes is or isn't used by folks who are walking across there. But certainly we're hoping to use the maximum amount of space, given that, we realize that when we do that, sometimes kids have a little bit of a walk to the door, but certainly something that it's actually on my Outlook calendar to be out there tomorrow morning at drop off rather than the front bus loop, so we can get to work on that.
Thanks, Marin. I'm going to transition over to the remote feedback from Council Rock, but in the meantime, ask one or both of you to comment on this idea. It came up in a couple different places. Basically, somebody saying, I don't know how my child's doing. I haven't really heard yet. What should I be doing? What should I know? And I know it came up from a new parent in the PTSA welcome on Monday night too. Just kind of this idea that, what am I supposed to be seeing, or how do I assess that? I know this is a good thing because people want to know how their child's doing. What's your general thinking on that? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think that, we all are saying we're in unprecedented times, and we're probably all sick of hearing that. But, I think teachers are working hard to really get to know their students as people, as little people, as learners, as who they are as learners, and then really where their, functioning is, what are their skills, what are their strengths, what do they bring, and then what are their goals. I think teachers are, just completing assessments. We held off on assessments. Again, in a typical year, we wouldn't have held off until, October, but we encourage teachers to hold off and really use the time to reconnect, get to know their kids, make sure they were building that community before we dove into, after having some time away from the building, we didn't want to pull them in and start testing them. We wanted them to feel comfortable and feel, so, it makes sense to me that maybe you haven't heard. Again, I would encourage, coming up in the next, month or so, we're hoping that every family will have a chance to connect with their classroom teacher during parent conferences. And we're hoping that that's a really good opportunity for you and for the teacher to have a dialogue about what you're seeing at home. One of the kindergarten parents said in the beginning, it's the most involved. They're very involved parents, but I'm really involved. I'm hands-on. And more than ever, you as instructors of your children are co-instructors with the classroom teacher, and to share your feedback, but also hear what the teachers have to say. I would say that it's a good sign if you haven't, heard at this point. I know sometimes no news is not good news, but, I think teachers who had, bigger concerns probably would have reached out by now to say, well, let's see, what can we do? But I want to give my teachers a little bit of a break in terms of the fact that they really are trying to get to know who they are, what their skill levels are, and then, start to develop what are goals for your child. So, and again, I would always say, if you want, more information, please reach out to your child's teacher and, ask for, you don't need to wait until our parent-teacher conferences. But I'm sure our teachers would be willing to kind of just give you a little rundown of how things are. So,
thanks, Matt. I know both of you probably hear this from teachers as well, this idea of how difficult it is to assess kids when they're on a screen. So this is now from the remote group. And I'm wondering if you can just comment on, how teachers are feeling on the other side of this as well, relative to, how can they tell, and the accuracy on Zoom, and when kids are shy or missing the emotional cues. I bet they're frustrated too. What are we thinking about that? What kind of adjustments might we make, or what's on teachers' mind with regard to this? Are they aware of it?
I can jump in, Matt. I think our teachers are really aware of it. I just think they're so used to the rich connections that they're able to build so much more quickly in person, that adding Zoom, adding developmental norms, all of those things sort of create layers that we have to work through as kids sort of develop their understanding of how a Zoom session goes. I do know that teachers have really been thinking carefully about understanding that in order to dig down and really understand what a child knows or doesn't know, they might need to be accessing that through a breakout room or a small group session. So teachers have been doing a little bit of brainstorming about maybe having a parent volunteer manage those sessions where the teacher is now working in a small group scenario with a few students to gain that understanding. they're then left with the problem solving of just managing and supervising the kids who are not directly with them. So I know as we hear conversations and I start to meet with many teachers, those are things that have been coming up. Certainly there's a close monitoring. You know, I had a great interaction with a staff member this past week where those notifications that you get on Seesaw that sometimes get under your skin, teachers also get that many notifications too. Every time a child is posting or commenting or asking a question, they're getting those notifications and they're looking at every single one. And so I know that if children are reaching out to teachers, just letting them know this child had just shared that it was a particularly rough day. No specific information, but that teacher had cause to just share that with me and say, you know, what do you know about this child? I'm really going to go and talk to our mental health supports and just make sure someone is hooked up in case the family is interested, and just explore that more and just really make sure we've got this child surrounded. So just knowing that those forms of communication, though they seem more distant, are certainly wide open. And that if children are demonstrating in any way that they need more support, our teachers really have a close eye on that.
That's great. Really helpful information there. Another question about YouTube, and somebody suggesting we not host videos on YouTube. I know we've actually worked through this in a couple of different ways. It's tricky. It's such a valuable platform in a lot of ways. And there are controls certainly that you can put on your account at home to avoid some of these issues. But Matt, Marin, any advice around that or any thinking around that, maybe the history to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I take some responsibility for that because I've been doing mine on YouTube. I'm not sure if this was directed at teachers or at actually my Wednesday, remote videos, read-alouds that Mrs. Jeffries and I have done. I started this morning with those, putting them into SafeTube. The problem with that for me is sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, and that can sometimes be as frustrating as the YouTube issues when families go to try to open a video and it's not opening on their device. And I experienced that in March and through the spring when I would sometimes try to use SafeTube. So we'll continue to try to find, safer ways. We recognize that YouTube is not probably the preferred way. It is a tool that we have, pretty easy access to in terms of making it. One thing Dr. Rio actually shared with me today is that by sharing from our OneDrive, we may be able to avoid the YouTube. And I'm speaking specifically to my videos. I'm not talking about teachers' videos that maybe that they've used, but videos that we've used. So I'm going to do that. I just have this ultimate fear of someone not being able to access the video and that being really upsetting and frustrating for kids and families. So I think that's where the sometimes going back to that path of least resistance to YouTube sometimes comes, because I know that almost always works, although it has a host of other problems. So
great. Thank you. One more question here, and then I want to give people the opportunity. We'll go through the chat as well and give people the opportunity to jump in and verbalize anything and engage in a discussion. And like I said, we'll wrap up taking a look at the Facebook comments too. Just this idea of share the lesson plan. I'm still unsure what's expected or required for students to know and learn. Share with parents. New York State requires students in grade X to know the following. So share with parents the plan so we can be on board and see progress. Any thinking about that or ways we can communicate that to parents?
Yeah, I think that, in reviewing a lot of the presentations that our teachers gave at curriculum night, I think that it's interesting when I think about this, that I think they usually do more of that because in the nature of it, they're really truly, as we renamed it from open house to curriculum night, they're truly sharing the curriculum. And I think this year we may have missed, we had a lot of marks to hit. And one of them was how to log on, how to get onto Seesaw, what I'm going to do with your children in this day, the schedule, some more of the nuts and bolts of how things were going to work. And that says to me that maybe we didn't communicate as clearly, you know, hey, here are the units that we do in science and social studies. Here are the units. Here's what a progression of ELA looks like. So I can work with the teachers to maybe even look back at previous year's curriculum nights as a resource to be able to share with families that, you know, does clearly outline by the end of first grade, here's what we expect from a typically developing student who has progressed the way that we would hope in getting ready for second grade. Again, I don't think it was anything other than necessity at those curriculum nights to maybe be talking about things that weren't directly curriculum, you know, because we had a lot of other things that we wanted to make sure you were all on the same page with us with. So
great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Marin. Also, just in the chat, before I throw it wide open for anybody to unmute themselves, I'm inviting / begging you to do so and have a talk with us. We'd love to field your questions. But in the chat, I noticed that Marin had answered a couple questions too. Was there anything in the chat that you noticed, Marin, that you wanted to just communicate to the whole group in this format?
One piece came up that I had just mentioned to someone who was curious about their, sorry, I'm just trying to find it quickly here, their remote learner, I believe, who just some concern around building friendships within the remote classroom, making connections. And I just responded to share that during the kindergarten session, we had talked a little bit about both building relationships between the two separate cohorts of hybrid children as being something that teachers are focused on, as well as building relationships among the group of remote learners themselves who are part of the class. Also talking about how to make those remote learners feel part of the in-school community in some way and connecting with kids who are in the building. Some folks shared ideas about a possible pen pal solution or something like that we're going to keep on brainstorming. Certainly, there's just a thought that their child is feeling a little disconnected in the remote classroom and will continue to, first of all, I think that's something that the teacher would love to know and could facilitate, but something that we'll continue brainstorming ways to make those connections as well.
Great. Thanks, Marin. Okay, so it's wide open now. If you just simply go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know, tell us who you are. We'd love to have a conversation with you if anybody would like to jump in. Question from Lindsay, I see there in the chat about iPads and accessing some of the links. Wondering if anybody else is having that issue. If anybody wants to throw that into the chat. Certainly, Lindsay, we can have somebody reach out to you too and check on that. But really glad that it's working out well and that people are responding to those posts. So many people are doing really incredible work. It's been great to see.
I know, Dr. McGowan, just while we're having a lull, so please don't take me, I'm just filling air now. So this is, but I know there was still some confusion about attendance from a few people. So attendance, just so you know, has been kind of a sticky situation, K-12, in terms of figuring this out and ironing it out. I think we have a pretty good system, but we want to make sure that it's communicated to you. So all right, I'm going to take hybrid students. So hybrid students, when you are in person in school, your teacher takes attendance. That one makes sense because they're sitting in front of you. On your independent at-home days, so that would be if you are a Monday, Thursday in person, your Tuesday, Fridays when you're at home and there's not a teacher in front of you, you know, that is the time when you need to log into your child's school tool account and just click, yes, we're ready to learn. So that needs to be done. On your Wednesday remote, you have a teacher in front of you and they take attendance. So again, think about if the teacher is there, they're taking attendance. For my remote folks, you know, on your days when your teacher is leading and doing live Zoom sessions, they will take the attendance. On their asynchronous day, which I believe most of them are doing it on Wednesdays, that would be the time when you would need to go in and log in on your child's school tool account. I know it's really confusing because it's about like 12 different, you know, choose your own adventure paths. And it makes sense to us because we kind of crafted it. So I would say if there's any confusion and your child gets marked absent, please just call our office and we can very easily change an absent to a present, based on your attestation, especially at this level, that they were there. So.
And if I could just add, oh, sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to what Matt said. Maybe Maureen, this is what you were going to say. You can't log in as you. You have to actually use your child's login information, which for most, I mean, you hopefully received that information. If not, you can just call the office and they will let you know what your child's login information is.
Yep.
Just to follow up on Leah's question, she's asking, is attendance taken at every Zoom time? Leah, I'm wondering if you're thinking about every individual Zoom time throughout the day. Teachers don't repeatedly take attendance. Often they take it within that first 9 o'clock hour. And then we do often receive follow-up messages from teachers if they notice that kids are not logging back in or attending the rest of the afternoon, if the parent hasn't followed up with them, if it was for a doctor's appointment or whatnot. I was going to just mention something that's come up a little bit recently is the thought that if hybrid students are not in school, that if the family just decides to work from home for that day, maybe completing makeup work or something that's undone on Seesaw, that does not count as an absence. But if your child is hybrid and they attend either the Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday, if they're not in person, that does count as an absence on those days. Just how we're moving forward, just to clarify that for anyone.
And I think there's also some questions. Some remote people, I think, are panicking a little because they're saying we never recorded our child on Wednesday. I do believe, and Dr. Baker and Dr. McGowan, you may be able to share with me, I believe on your parent portal, you can see attendance history for your child so that you can look to see. Here's what we've been doing, just so you know. Until about 2 weeks ago, we've been giving lots of grace, and we've been leaving it marked present unless we, have a problem or know of something. So it is quite likely that if you haven't logged in at all, you didn't get marked absent for every Wednesday, but you certainly can go in and look to see if there are absences that no, my child was here, and you can call the office and we can fix those for you really easily. So sorry about that.
Also, Mr. Tappan, we do send emails to parents whose students have been counted absent so they can have a chance to say, oh, my child wasn't absent. They just forgot to log in and do it. So if you haven't gotten if you haven't gotten an email, that means you're good as well. Is good news here.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order from the screen here? And then I'll take a look at Facebook as well. I did see a... I don't know if that question was answered. Okay. Taking a quick look at Facebook, there's about 18 people, and a comment from Jennifer Fox. I'm so grateful for all the hard work you've all been putting into educating our children during these challenging times. My son's team has been so amazing with communication, so really glad to hear that. And I'd also say, in the thought exchange feedback, we really do want the constructive criticism, so to speak, and the feedback so we can keep getting better. So there's no question this is not meant to just gather compliments and have people tell us how great things are going. However, we also don't mind that. We're glad and don't mind knowing when things are positive, and we appreciate you telling us that too, because it's important to know. This is, the way I described it last night, our board meeting, more innovation in the last several months than probably in 100 years. I mean, our education right now, really in terms of structurally what it looks like in classrooms, looks similar to what it looked like for the entire last century. So what has happened over the last several months is pretty dramatic in terms of a move in the system, and it needed to, and that's what we owe to you and your children, no question about that. But it is really great to hear that when it is working for people, and we pass that along as well. I know our teachers appreciate that. They're working awfully hard at it. It's not perfect each and every day. They know that. We know that. And we're working hard to make it perfect every day. That's always been our goal. And we'll continue to plug away at that. So thank you for that as well. And thank you to them for all that they're doing to make this work and care for your children in some very strange circumstances. So a last call. Anything else that you'd like to add or bring up?
Quick question. Is the kids still going to get the school-wide iPad at some point? Is that still... Are they required to use it?
So, we have those iPads on order. Some of them have arrived, and we'll be thinking about how they get deployed to those who haven't had it. So, great question about whether they'll have to use it or not. If what you have at home is working really well right now, I would say I wouldn't change and, change what's not broke. If you've got a good system, I think in our dream world, we would have had them all ready to be able to hand out to you. You would have learned on those, and that would have been the preferred mode. I think what it will allow is for those, especially in the hybrid world, who are coming back and forth, for them to have that as a tool that a teacher could use both in the classroom and then send home. But if what you have that is working well, I would encourage you to keep doing that. There's really nothing that an iPad can do that can't be done, and then the teacher would let you know if there was like a particular application that really only does come with an iPad. So
I guess my question is, because I've been on a quest to make it easier for my first grader on how to navigate the Zoom links. So I've been talking with other parents who have the school iPads to see what can be done. And I am currently living and dying by Google Calendar, which I know cannot be installed on the iPad, because I literally wrote a script to generate all the Google Calendar invites or meetings for my child each week, because it was insanity in just trying to navigate, what's special, and embedding PDF links, sharing it with other parents in his class. Like, here are the links for the PDF. If you can figure out how to save it. So I've been working around, trying to get around it. And it's like, I don't even know if we can install Google Calendar app on, the school device iPad. I would love it, because that'll make my life easier, because then I could just pop the calendar in and then not have to worry about, keeping track of Zoom links and days and times and stuff like that. But that was my question.
Great news. Great news.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Someone in the chat said that they did put that on. We'll bring that back onto the school iPad. I don't have firsthand experience. I'm just going with what someone said in the chat. Yep. But we will check with our IT department too to see if that's a possibility, if that's a tool that is working well. So.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it was actually me that wrote that comment. We have a separate Google Calendar for each one of our children, and each one of their school-provided devices. We installed Google Calendars so that they see their own one, and then they just click on it. As long as the teacher keeps the same link from week to week, then it works. If they change the link, it doesn't work.
So part of our takeaway is to make sure we remind teachers, keep the same link as much as you possibly can so that happens.
The easiest way is for them to make a Google Calendar and share it with the class, and they could just update it every week with the Zoom links. That's just one suggestion.
That's
what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm doing that on my own already. So I have I do that every week. Just waiting for the emails every Sunday from my son's teacher to just get ready to plug it in. So.
This is a big issue for remote learners. We've talked about it amongst each other, just like Kim is saying, but especially I see it in my daughter's class in kindergarten, because I'm able to be there to help her. She couldn't navigate those links on her own. But there are kids who are not making it to the specials, and I know it's because they're the same kids that they don't have a helper. So I do think it is something to look at. I know you have a million things to look at, but for the all remote, once you're in your teacher's class, it's pretty easy to stay within that. At least for the kindergarten, they keep them in the waiting room. But if you have to go off and go onto another link to a special, is when the kids just are having an incredibly difficult time going to all those different links.
So I've got to say, globally, if you'd told me a year ago we'd be having a conversation with K-2 parents about Google Calendars and links for Zoom meetings, I'd think you're crazy. What are you talking about? But this is really good feedback, because we can work on that. I know other people are struggling with it too. I've been communicating with another parent in the chat, sending separate messages about the exact same thing. I'm living it on Wednesday with my third grader. We've encouraged our staff to work remotely as much as possible while people are cleaning and while we're hoping to reduce the amount of interactions. And so I live on Antlers Drive. We call it Antlers Academy. I'm not nearly as successful as a food service manager as Nicole Vandermeed. It's been communicated clearly to me but it's fascinating on the receiving end with a 10th grader upstairs and a 3rd grader 2 rooms away from me, and balancing that while on Zooms with Matt Tappan and Debbie Baker throughout the day. So I'm living it, and I did the exact same thing. And each week I've had to figure out, okay, the teacher sent the links, they sent them in an email, or are they in Seesaw? Should I go in and bookmark them now? And if my meeting starts at 9:30 and her Zoom starts at 9:30, it's simple to say, okay, you've got to go get on your Zoom. But if the link is not there, if it's not, so totally get it. And it's really good feedback for us. The other piece for us is we've just been so focused on how do we manage thinking about our instruction differently and the platforms differently, and whether it's mastering Seesaw or ClassLink or at the secondary level Schoology, this is one more layer to that, and it's really good information for us to take away and think about how we can do that. Debbie, did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I actually want to ask the parents a question, and I see that the parent just commented, Bridget just commented. I'll be upfront with you. We are not a Google school. We're not a Google Classroom school. It's not that we can't use Google Calendar, but it's not any of the applications that as a district that our teachers, unless they do it on a personal level, are familiar with. So I guess my question is, it sounds like the issue is that you are kind of scrambling to try to figure out like where the links are, or where's the next Zoom. Would it be helpful, and maybe my assumption is, sounds like the teachers aren't necessarily including those links to the Zoom in the Seesaw. Would it be helpful if they said, meet me at 9 o'clock here, and there's a link? Would that be helpful to you, or is it really just the organizational structure that you're asking for?
I can only speak from my experience, but you could also use a Microsoft Calendar and just share that link, or the calendar itself, and then parents can feed that into Google Calendar. I mean, I could feed a Google Calendar into the Apple iPad calendar. Secondly,
Kim, make sure she puts her address.
I think part of it for our learners, I'm sorry, Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, and the second part is like, I know I get the weekly outline each week, but the Zoom links are in a separate PDF. So I've taken because I have Adobe Acrobat, I literally take the links and I embed it on top of the PDF, which I then save to the iPad, as well as send out to parents, because then all the kids have to do is look at their PDF and say, Mrs. Bruce, click. And it takes them to the Zoom automatically. But obviously, I'm a little more tech savvy than, teachers, and I'm able to do that. And not everyone's able to do that. So I know that teachers have posted links on Seesaw, but again, lots of notifications with like, check this activity, check this response, here's a comment. And, it's just a scrolling mess, at least on my part.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to share, my husband and I are both working full-time from home. Our first grader, his class will end, and then they'll say, okay, you have break for, snack break, and then go to your special. He loses track of the time, and so he's late to special because he's got 20 minutes to try and do snack and take a break, and I'm in my office trying to do phone calls, and all of a sudden he's like, wait, where do I have to go? And I look, and I'm like, oh, it's 9:30, and you're 10 minutes late for your class. So if there's some way to like remind them on this, like, hey, now is your time, because, like some kind of alarm or something, so that he knows, because a lot of times he's sitting there and he wants to do it, but he's not sure where he has to go. So he's struggling. He's been late a couple of times, and I know the teachers are understanding, but it's frustrating to have to stop working to go, hey, this is where you have to go. So, he's 6, so he's trying, and we're all trying, and it's, I'm grateful for everybody being patient and understanding.
I had the same experience, Carrie. I had to write an apology letter to the 2 teachers on the Zoom for the tardiness of my child, and accepted my detention and suspension outright. But yes, I can totally relate, because I was wrapped up in something else, and it was 10 minutes later, and she was doing something and not paying attention to that. I don't think about the calendar and the clock the same way we do. So this is good feedback. I'm sure we can work on it for sure.
We had trouble with the alarms and doing what you're having trouble with, Carrie. I'm not sure if your computer or tablet has it, but there's an alarm on ours that we just set alarm that would say, go to math, or an alarm, go to art class. And it would be something that you can set weekly. And then it would have a chime. So my oldest son, or not my oldest, my middle son, who's in 5th grade, sets it that way. So when it chimes off, he'll know what chime matches which class he has to go and look at. So I don't know if you have it on your tablet, but it's been working for my 3rd grader. Just a suggestion.
Great, thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the order? I'm going to take one last look at Facebook too and make sure we're not neglecting any comments that might be coming up. Courtney has a suggestion to carry as well around that same issue. But seeing none others, I would just say, Matt, Marin, anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
I guess I'd just like to, reiterate, I've said it many times, but we are so thankful and appreciative of you sharing your children with us in whatever capacity is, whether it's on a screen as a full remote student or with us when they come in for hybrid. We appreciate your patience. I think we all recognize some of us having kids of our own and, what March through June looked like and the amount of management and support. It's our biggest fear that we've got kindergartners through 2nd graders, and we know that they can't do it without you. And we are so appreciative of your kindness, your grace, as we've, worked to figure this out, because we definitely needed grace. And we hope that we've extended that to you as well. And we appreciate, the feedback that you've given us, and we'll just keep working to try to make sure we're connecting with your kids, bringing them where they need to be, and providing a safe, happy, nurturing environment for them as they move through whatever this year looks like. So
great. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And keep the conversation going. Feel free to provide feedback to us anytime. We really do need that so we can keep growing and learning along with you. Stay safe, everybody. Keep your mask on, stay distanced, and take care. Thank you.
This has been a special presentation from Council Rock Primary School.